Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, two of the greatest shooters who have ever graced an NBA floor. 4 of the top 10 greatest three-point shooting seasons in NBA history are owned by Curry, and 2 of them belong to Thompson. We just watched a dominant Warriors team win a 3rd championship in 4 years, at the helm of the three-point shooting revolution, led largely by the all-time backcourt of the Splash Brothers. However, what I want to point out and describe in some detail in this video is that despite the similarity in the results of their 2 shooting techniques, they have significant differences in their actual mechanics. The purpose of this video is going to be to show that it is mostly true that everyone has their own mechanics, and that you can't expect to copy someone else's shot and experience the same success as them. With that being said, I still want to note early on my belief that there are some techniques that are necessarily harmful to your shooting consistency, and there are some that are not. Obviously, Curry and Thompson only really display the good ones, so to find the bad ones, you're going to have to watch some other videos in this channel that break down bad shooters, like Ben Simmons. Again, to summarize, there are options that you have with your shooting technique, some of which are displayed by Curry and Thompson, as long as they fall within the range of logical technique points that I've tried to establish here on this channel. Without further ado, let's get into the main body of this video, starting with Curry and Thompson's offhands. Curry and Thompson have a fundamental difference in how they use their offhands when they shoot the ball. Thompson epitomizes the classical style taught by the majority of shooting coaches, that is, the offhand is the guide hand, with no input into the shot apart from to direct the ball towards the basket. Sure enough, as you can see with Klay, his left hand disconnects from the ball without interfering with his shot. The key thing to observe here is the movement, or lack of it, in his left thumb. His left hand thumb points upwards and doesn't move as the ball moves through the release point and beyond. This is the main sign of a clean offhand release, which clearly has worked well for Klay. If we move to Curry, however, we'll see that he displays something very different with his left hand thumb. Around his set point, Curry's thumb points towards his head and is separated from his left hand index finger because he's using it to hold the ball steady. However, if we move forward to around his release, after his left hand is disconnected from the ball, we can see that his left hand thumb has changed its position quite dramatically. From this angle, we can no longer see the thumb because it's now behind the left index finger and the left palm. If we go to another angle, we can see it throughout the movement. Despite the blur because of the speed of the movement in this footage, it's pretty clear that his left hand thumb moves forward with the ball as it's launched forward. It looks like the movement is caused by both movement in his thumb relative to the hand, that is, flexion in the thumb, as well as a general outward rotation of the left wrist. Together, these actions result in what I would call an offhand thumb flick. Obviously, this movement has worked well for Curry, as he's probably the greatest shooter of all time. If a coach tells you that you can't be a good shooter with an offhand thumb flick, they're simply incorrect. Curry is just one example, and many of you know that Kyrie Irving is another. The point here is not to say that you need an offhand thumb flick to be a good shooter, just go back to Klay Thompson to disprove that. But rather, it's to show that an offhand thumb flick does not necessitate that you will be limited as a shooter. I don't know how to put it more clearly than this, and these coaches who force young players to not thumb flick are, I believe, doing those players a disservice. Next, I want to talk about the placement of the shooting hand on the ball and the presence of elbow flare in the shooting arm, 2 things that are intimately related. Once more, Thompson epitomizes the classical blueprint shooting form that's been taught for decades. If you've ever been coached on how to shoot, you've probably heard that you have to keep your elbow in underneath the ball as you raise it up. Klay comes close to achieving this so-called ideal technique in his shot. His right elbow is very close to being directly under the ball around his set point, and as a result, his shooting side hand is also pretty much directly under the ball. This makes the extension portion of his shot very simple. It's just an extension of the arm and a flexion of the shoulder and wrist, all on a vertical plane. Because there is no offhand interference, this means that the force being applied to the ball is very straight, giving Klay a consistently straight shot. Moving to Curry, we see once again a fundamental difference to Klay. we can clearly see that Curry's right elbow is not tucked in underneath the ball and his hand like it was with Klay Thompson at his set point. Because of this elbow position, it's no surprise to see that Curry's shooting hand contacts the ball at a point that is not directly underneath the center bottom of the ball. Also, as a side note, I'd like to suggest that from what I can see, Curry cannot see past the ball at this point of his shot, making the whole idea of set point position and vision somewhat defunct, but that's a point for another video. Returning to the arm positioning, Curry does not have his elbow tucked in the traditional sense, proving that you can have some elbow flare and still be a consistent shooter. This makes his shot somewhat more complex as a series of movements than Klay's, as I pointed out that Klay's muscles operate in a single linear plane. Instead, Curry's arm and shoulder have to come into alignment in between the set point and the release point, meaning that as his arm extends, his elbow moves in and his wrist rotates outwards. This wrist rotation brings Curry's inner half of his right hand upwards, leveling out his palm underneath the center of the ball. These small adjustments mid-extension are what allows Curry to shoot straight at the moment of release, despite displaying a fairly significant elbow flare at his set point. Once again, the point here is not that you need elbow flare to shoot consistently. Just look at Klay Thompson to disprove that idea. Rather, what I'm trying to say here is that you can have some elbow flare and still shoot consistently, as long as you find alignment at some point during the extension part of your shot. Before I get to the final section of this video, I want to make a more general point. That is that, despite the several important differences between the two, there are also many key similarities as well. The most important of those is what I call early release timing, a phenomenon that Klay and Steph have truly perfected in order to efficiently harness the power from their legs. Because this video is about the differences between the two, and to avoid an overly long video, I'm not going to go into this right now. But I will include the most detailed description of release timing that I've ever done in the next episode of Head to Toe, episode 3, where I'm going to be breaking down Steph Curry's shot. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss that video when it comes out. If you like this kind of shooting analysis, make sure to also follow me on Instagram, where I've been tracking my own shooting development over the past few months. I'm hoping to take some big strides with my own shot this summer, so be sure to follow my journey over there. Returning to the final analysis part of this video, I want to talk about some differences that Steph and Klay have with their stances. One difference is that Klay tends to have a wider stance than Curry. Curry's feet are often around shoulder width or within shoulder width, whereas Thompson's are often outside of shoulder width. Another difference is that Curry likes to turn his upper body with a small turn in his lower body, whereas Thompson likes to turn his feet specifically without really turning his upper body as much to match the angle of the feet. Again, the key here is still the presence of some level of turn in the upper body, and the number of small differences between the two prove that there's no real perfect amount of turn in the upper or lower body. Instead, each player will have something that works for them within the general category of the turn. Now that's all I have to say in this video. Congratulations on making it through to the end of a YouTube video, and you'll hear from me in the next breakdown on this channel.